Okay, we're going to ask some questions.
Okay.
Okay, I'm going to pick out this Geoffrey's magic hat, special hat.
Fine.
Okay, we'll answer these. Do you ever think, no more crime, it's too dark for me?
There have been moments, but I'm lucky enough not to suffer dreadful nightmares. There are times when it creeps up on you, and I would always say, and have said many times in fact, that it's wise not to read true crime late at night because it can affect you.
I can't read it late at night.
I remember when I did a book about the Wests, I gave it a copy to a Daily Express reporter who'd been with the case from the very beginning. In fact, she'd ghosted a book with Anna Marie, and I gave it to her and I said, my only advice is don't read this at night. And she said, oh rubbish, I know all about the case. 36 hours later she rang me up and said I couldn't read it at night. You have to have a kind of cast of mind.
You've got to be able to switch it off, don't you, a bit?
You have to have a cast of mind, so that it doesn't inhabit you. Now, maybe it means that I'm not sympathetic enough, or I should be more, but what I feel, and have felt for quite a long time now, is the reason that I've done such a lot of true crime is I can make it relatively accessible. That it is something that, yes, it's horrible and gruesome and absolutely depraved, but I try and explain what's going on rather than just gloat over the gore, which is not my objective ever and never will be. Do you get nightmares?
Do I get nightmares? I don't get nightmares. I think that I naturally just love fictional crime. So when I go to sleep, for example, I would definitely put on a radio play or reading a book of I would always go to the crime section of the iPlayer radio app, first of all, weirdly. I just love crime stories, but the true crime that we do, some of it I do find very disturbing, but yes, like you, I just kind of I shut it down.
Well, when I say don't read this at night or listen to this late at night, I should say that I review crime fiction and thrillers for the Daily Mail, and I read a lot of crime fiction at night and first thing in the morning because it's one of the quieter periods of the day. The phone isn't ringing, the computer isn't flashing, and I have time to concentrate. So it's not entirely true to say that I don't read true crime or at least crime fiction at night.
Crime fiction's a bit different, I think.
It is.
It's a bit, you detach yourself more.
Yeah.
Okay, do you want to read one?
Okay. Why are you interested in true crime?
I don't know, I was just thinking about that, what the actual answer for that is. I just have always loved, I think it stems more from the fictional interest than the factual interest.
Yeah.
And then once you started being more involved with true crime, I suppose that's when I just started, I don't know, yeah, whenever I flashed through some BBC webpage or whatever, I'll always light upon some particular crime that would be of more interest to me, like why did someone end up getting killed at blah 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 whatever time, or, stories about whatever the dreadful.
There is absolutely no doubt that just this week, for example, there's been that terrible case of the little girl killed on the Isle of Bute in Scotland by a 16-year-old who was convicted on Friday. Truly horrible murder. The little girl was brutalised, and it was in every way disgraceful, and yet at one point I'm certainly going to have to do it, but we'll have to wait for the appeal process to exhaust itself.
I think it's just that thing that we always talk about, and the reason that we think people listen and why we're interested is how is it that it's got to the point where someone who is a human, who we are potentially standing next to in the queue in the supermarket, is able to do something like
unimaginable.
How does the human mind work or whatever, so that ends up happening? So
I think it's very difficult to understand. It's almost a stereotype to suggest that troubled childhoods can breed killers. The examples are endless. Tearing wings off butterflies, trying to fry the hamster.
Setting things on fire.
Setting things on fire, a very early indicator often of a serial killer. Now, not all young people who set things on fire turn into serial killers. No, not at all. But there is an uncanny familiarity in a lot of the childhoods.
Maybe it's just a nature-nurture question, which is just interesting in all respects.
In all respects, yes. But one thing is absolutely certain, that what the podcast is trying to do is to unravel what seemingly is inexplicable.
Yeah.
How did this happen?
But sometimes we can sympathise a little more with somebody who's committed an atrocious crime than another. You know, that's what we try and do, don't we?
Absolutely.
A little bit work out what happened and why.
Yes.
Okay, last one.
Yep.
What was the crime that got you interested in true crime, as it were?
Well, this is a long story, but I'll do it as quickly as I can. We were in Los Angeles in the summer of 1995.
Great holiday, that was a great holiday.
And I got a phone call from my then agent saying, you won't believe this, but they're looking for a biographer, to do an official biography of Frederick West, the Gloucester serial killer. Fred by this time was dead. He'd killed himself in Winston Green on the 1st of January, Winston Green in Birmingham, that is. But Rose's trial was on the horizon, and so I wrote a synopsis, brief. I had no connection with the case. I'd been doing a book about Cary Grant, who I'd written about before, movie star, one of the legends, British movie stars. And so I wrote probably the worst synopsis I've ever written in my life. I'm truly ashamed of it to this day. I mean, it sends shivers down my spine. I called it The Locked Room. I cannot imagine why. Anyway, believe it or not, I get back to this country. My agent rings me up and says, the official solicitor wants you to do it. And I said, really? I mean, yes. So I have a meeting with a very nice man, and a little time passes, and Rose's trial is about to begin. It's October 1995, and I have to sign all sorts of confidentiality agreements saying I won't disclose the material that I'm looking at, because I'm being given access not only to West's prison diary but also to his interviews, Rose's interviews, the witness statements, the whole lot. So I go along to the trial and enter the West industry. I mean, there are 6 books being written. There is worldwide interest. There's a video overflow room. It's a circus in the biggest possible way. Okay, the trial begins Wednesday. On the Saturday, I'm instructed to go to an office. I'm not allowed to say where the office is. It's in a solicitor's partnership. Not allowed to say who the solicitors are. And I have to ask for a man with an unpronounceable name, who's very sweet and also very short. And he says, oh yes, follow me. So I follow him through this very expensive set of offices until we reach, I am not joking, this is absolutely true, a door which says on it K, and it's room K. Those of you who can remember Kafka. He opens the door. Inside, it's a room with no windows. It's a small table, a telephone, and a giant grey filing cabinet with a double door. He says, I'm afraid you can't take anything out. You'll need a cassette player, the old-fashioned cassette players. Nobody has them anymore, but remember them, I'm sure. And he says, there you go. And he leaves, locks me in. It's as if I'm going to be frisked as I leave, no doubt. So I think, well, what I don't know. So I open the double doors to the grey filing cabinet. It is a jumble, an absolute jumble. There are interviews and there are cassette tapes. There's no catalogue. There's no key to any of this. But right in the middle of the 5, I think, shelves, there is a brown cardboard box. It's about a foot by a foot by a foot. So I take it out and I put it on the table and I open it. And it turns out to be West's clothes, all the way down to his underpants, his socks and his shoes. I think that was the moment when I suppose you could say true crime took me over. because just one more. I just add one more story. I didn't go which I think on retrospect I probably should have done, but I put the box away, and I pick up the first of the tapes and I put it into the tape recorder and I press play, and there's that unmistakable little Herefordshire voice, Frederick Walter Stephen West. Just to give a few words for the tape, Frederick Walter Stephen West, and he begins to describe killing his and Rose's daughter Heather in the most graphic detail. And I'm in a room with no windows, in an office I can't disclose where it is, and that's how it all began.
Yeah. I suppose then that coming into your life meant it came into my life.
It did, because they made a radio documentary, didn't they?
Yeah, but that would be why more interest in true crime as a result of that.
Yes. I mean, I can well remember a long discussion being recorded from whatever it was, Radio 4.
It was Radio 4.
About what we should call the book. And Molly, who was a little younger then, had very firm views.
Did I?
Yes, very firm.
Well then that's how we became a true crime family.
That's genuinely how it began.